fixed exchange rates between the US dollar and the allied countries' currencies were decided upon. As one can see, gold was at the base of this monetary system, and the exchange rates between the dollar and the other currencies were just a derivative of this system. The Bretton Woods system ran smoothly up until the mid-1960s, but the Vietnam War and the welfare state started to weigh on the system as Western governments thought they could spend money on guns and butter, and that somehow in the long term things would get better. Yeah, reminds me of the big beautiful bill. Wow, we got to spend and borrow before things get better, right? Hey Mario, if I had not listened to you about gold, silver, and gold miners, I would just have paper fiat currency. Also listening to you and holding physical gold and silver has prevented me from shorting the market. It has been a slow, steady, and at times frustrating financial journey. Yes, I've been on this journey, the sound money journey, since '02, and I can attest to that. But you were always there to reassure me that I was on the right track. Perhaps true wealth, time, and real money, gold and silver, makes us more financially stable. Well, I agree. And you become more respectful of what wealth really is, that it's just a reflection of what you can do for the rest of society, right? In terms of creating value, and also in terms of consuming and spending and saving, right? You need to make sure that you consume less than you take in. That's all that it is about. That's it. And gold and silver, of course, are really good ways to store those savings. He says at the end, I am far more frugal and I prioritize my health, fitness, mental, and spiritual ability above all else. And I have to say, I've been doing the same in the last 10, 15 years. I am one person who listened to you, so I'm going to stop right here, and we'll jump right to the article. I'm going to put a link to this article in the description. It's so old that it's in the Wayback Machine.
The weakness of today's monetary system can be traced back to Bretton Woods in 1944, when the US dollar was tied to gold and became the world's reserve currency. For every $35, central banks could redeem 1 ounce of gold. But this system began unraveling as governments overspent on wars and welfare programs. By the late 1960s, excessive U.S. money printing was testing the gold standard. As foreign creditors demanded gold in exchange for dollars, the system neared collapse. It was a reminder that no fiat currency can be trusted indefinitely when political agendas collide with economic discipline.
So I used to keep a blog while I was still working in the city as a futures and options broker for about 2 years, I think from '06 to '08. It was called forsoundmoney.com. And yes, I wrote this article back on 18th of December 2006. It's entitled, They Are All Sinking. So let's go through it, because I went through it this morning and I found it, I'm not being big-headed, but I thought this is really clear and straightforward. And I have to tell you, in almost 20 years, nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed, of course, is that the world fiscal, monetary, debt, government, society is going even more, unfortunately, down the wrong path. And of course, the fiat currencies, they've continued to sink, and they're almost at the bottom. So let's go through this. There has been a great deal of speculation over the last few years over when or whether the dollar will crash and burn. One thing many analysts, economists, and speculators have not taken into account is the fact that all other currencies on the planet are derived from the dollar. One has to go back to July 1944 to understand the nature of our present monetary system. That was when the major Allied nations gathered at the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to draw up a new financial architecture that would become the new backbone of commerce and trade for the Allied nations after the end of World War II. The United States held over 50% of official gold reserves in the world at the time. And with that in mind, the dollar was formally made into the reserve currency for Western countries. It was decided that for every $35 foreign central banks held, they could receive 1 troy ounce of fine gold in exchange for it. Concurrently,
on August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon made a fateful announcement. The United States would suspend the dollar's convertibility into gold. What was meant to be a temporary measure became permanent, ending the Bretton Woods system. From that moment, global currencies floated without any gold backing. The result was predictable. Inflation soared, the dollar lost purchasing power, and gold soared from $35 to $875 an ounce by 1980. Central banks fought to restore confidence through record-high interest rates, but the world had entered a new era, one where money was no longer anchored to real value.
Fixed exchange rates between the US dollar and the Allied countries' currencies were decided upon. As one can see, gold was at the base of this monetary system, and the exchange rates between the dollar and the other currencies were just a derivative of this system. The Bretton Woods system ran smoothly up until the mid-1960s, but the Vietnam War and the welfare state started to weigh on the system as Western governments thought they could spend money on guns and butter, and that somehow in the long term things would get better. Yeah, reminds me of the big beautiful bill. Wow, we got to spend and borrow before things get better, right? So as usual, governmental profligacy wrecked a monetary system with gold as an anchor, like the Bretton Woods system, stood in the way of the welfare state, and politicians didn't want to do away with the status quo. And I can tell you they're going to fight tooth and nail for the welfare state and their power. And that's why we're going down. And by we, I mean all fiat currencies are going down. By 1971, the US government had printed too much money to pay for the Vietnam War and Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. And I would argue also the New Deal that was accumulating from the 30s. These new dollars being printed were not being backed by a corresponding amount of gold, $35 per troy ounce. It's really simple. And that's why the gold price is such an important barometer of monetary health.
Since the 1970s, every major fiat currency has steadily lost ground against gold. The dollar, euro, yen, and pound have all depreciated, though at different speeds. For brief periods, policy maneuvers like Paul Volcker's shock interest hikes in the 1980s restored confidence, but debt levels were low then, and such measures are nearly impossible today. Now, U.S. government debt exceeds 120% of GDP, making double-digit rates unthinkable. As a result, central banks have no choice but to inflate. The purchasing power of money erodes slowly, then suddenly, while gold quietly reminds us what true monetary value looks like.
Of course, most people think gold is just a risky commodity because they went to Harvard, Yale, London School of Economics, Oxford, where they don't teach you that. And as a result, foreign U.S. creditors, foreign central banks, were demanding payment in gold, and this situation led to an unsustainable situation, which could have led to a run on the U.S. Treasury. So on August 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon shut the bank. That's a term I use. Yeah, he closed the bank. And as a result, closed the gold window, which meant foreign central banks and monetary authorities could no longer redeem their US dollar notes into gold at a fixed price, of course. And it's been temporary ever since. The bank's been shut. This act by President Nixon also led to the breakdown of the Bretton Woods system. As the anchor of the system, gold was abandoned. Well, I think it's coming back. It will have to come back. There's no other alternative. And I think a lot of central banks see the writing on the wall, especially the non-Western ones, unfortunately. With the end of the Bretton Woods system also came the end of the fixed rate monetary system, and as a result, the global monetary system, for the first time in modern times or history, had no standard of value for which to base itself on. So, since 1971, the dollar and the rest of the world's currencies have been sinking and gold has been rising. The purchasing power of the dollar and its fellow fiat currencies have also been steadily sinking since 1971.
After a long bear market, gold began rising again in the early 2000s. In 2001, it traded near $250 an ounce. By 2006, it surpassed $600. Today, gold trades above $2,400, and in some currencies, like the Japanese yen, prices have exploded to record highs. Importantly, this isn't just a story of gold rising, it's fiat money falling. Central banks, particularly outside the West, have been accumulating gold at the fastest pace in over 50 years. Nations like China, Russia, and Turkey are preparing for a post-dollar world, one where gold once again plays a central role.
From 71 to 1980, the fiat currencies of the world sunk very quickly and gold rose very fast. And the only way to save the fiat system was to allow short-term dollar rates to spike into the 20% level. Yes, Paul Volcker did that in 1980-81. This high interest rate scenario of 1980 saved the dollar, and as a result, all other fiat currencies. Gold, on the other hand, had risen in terms of dollars from 35 in 1971 to 875 in January of 1980, and then started sinking. Yeah, gold sank for the next 21 years as confidence in the fiat money system remained in place. But the only way they were able to do that is to let rates go into double digits. Of course, the national debt at the time, US government debt, was only about 35% of GDP. I can't see central banks allowing rates to go to double digits or allowing rates to be set in the free market. It's undoable, and that's why they're going to continue to inflate. Since 2001, the trend has changed, and gold has been rising, and the dollar and all the other major fiat currencies have started sinking, just like back in the 1970s. So I made a list here of the major currencies and the gold's performance versus these currencies since the 2001 bottom. Some people think the bottom was 99, but they're very similar levels. But anyway, US dollar, the 2001 low was 254. At the time I wrote the article, it was $618.
The lesson is clear. Fiat currencies may survive for decades, but their trajectory is always downward. Meanwhile, gold and silver preserve purchasing power across generations. Today, with global debt at historic highs and trust in financial institutions weakening, the case for sound money is stronger than ever. Ordinary investors can learn from history by holding real assets instead of relying solely on paper promises. Just as in Venezuela or Lebanon, where people now trade in grams of gold, stability comes from tangible value. The journey may be long, but those who prepare with gold and silver remain resilient.
Yes, and there were a lot of people at the time, friends, family members, colleagues, who, when talking about gold, when I was telling them about gold, they would say, "Don't you think it's too expensive, though?" It was 618, and it's still the same thing today. Yes, it is expensive, and it's going to get even more expensive going forward. I think, unfortunately, we're going to get to the point where our currencies won't be able to buy any gold, just like in Venezuela, Lebanon, and other countries. You have to use other currencies or even gold. I saw in Venezuela a supermarket where you pay with grams of gold. Yeah, real gold. But anyway, the dollar was already up 143% from '01 to '06. The yen went from 30,000 in 2001 to 73 in December of '06. That's 143%. Well, the dollar, of course, right now, as I speak here, we're almost just a dollar below 3,600. Yes, $3,000 have been added to the price. I think in yen, it's even crazier. We're way above 500,000. Yes, 500,000 yen per ounce. So the euro, well, that went from 277 to 472, up 70.4%. So the euro had been doing relatively well versus gold compared to the dollar. That's because there was a bear market in the dollar versus the other fiat currencies. The dollar index dropped a lot from 2001 to 2008. But notice that they're all going down versus gold, though. Swiss franc as well, 426 to 754, up about 77%. And then the British pound, 176. 176 pounds. And in December 2006, it was 316.